Ah. Hey everyone. If you couldn't tell by the introduction, today we are talking about ownership. Let's get started. Ownership has become quite the buzzword over the last few years in the business community. Companies want their employees to feel like owners. Now, there are tons of examples like this across the market. One of my favorites is Google, and in the book Work Rules by Laszlo Bock, the former chief people officer, he talks about how Google wants all of their employees to feel like owners, or in their case, they call them founders. Now, what does this have to do with remote work? Well, as soon as you move out of the office and into wherever you're working remotely, you effectively become the sole proprietor of your own business. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so this is something that I like to call the ownership table. Now, in any working relationship between an employee and an employer, there is an interaction that occurs. And where that interaction occurs is very important when it comes to the idea of ownership. Let me explain. In a normal working environment, the employee leaves their table and effectively comes to the employer's house for dinner. Now, while the employee might bring some things with them like an appetizer or dessert, they rely on the employer for the table, the chair, the utensils, the actual food most of the time. That all is occurring at the employer's table. So the employee goes to the employer's house, eats, or in other words, works, and then returns home. Now in a remote setting, this is actually reversed. So you can see that instead of the employee going to the employer's table, the employer is effectively going to the employee's table. They're coming and saying, hey, here's this thing that I need to get done, and I need you to do it. Now, look at where the ownership happens here. Look how much ownership the employee has now received to make that a good experience for the employer. Instead of the employer taking care of the table and how everything looks and how everything's set up, now the employee has effectively taken over that ownership. So in order for this to be successful, the employee has to take a greater amount of ownership in the equation. The employee cannot expect the employer to come to their house for dinner and also bring their entire dining set with them, full of tables and chairs and eating utensils. The employee's responsibility now is to create the environment that the two can have a relationship and for that relationship to be successful. Now, we're going to talk a ton about what this means throughout this series. But right now, I really need to go and get a haircut. Well, I'm here at the place I get my hair cut, so I guess I'll see you after. And we're back. I'm gonna head back to my place and we're gonna finish this thing off. So So I wanted to finish this video outside because frankly, I have not been getting enough fresh air. I'm sure that you can relate over the last couple of weeks. When it comes to finishing up the conversation of ownership and how that changes when you move into a remote work environment, an employee really has the opportunity to take back the ownership of their life when they move remote. The reason being is instead of the employer taking care of things like their physical workspace, the schedule, when things get done, their responsibilities and value add to the company, all of a sudden the employee gets to be a big contributor in these factors because they really control a lot of that when it moves to a remote work environment. So if you can take control of the business of your life and be the sole proprietor and then leverage that value with the company that you're currently working for or the companies that you will be working for, that's really when you're going to be able to experience the incredible advantages of remote work, when you can really start taking that ownership. And that's really what this video series is going to be covering. We're going to be talking about all those in depth. So stick around for the next video and I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.